So there are 41 verses in John chapter 9. I've got my 5 teaching points. They're going to come up here awkwardly because Google Drive is messing about. So I'm just going to click these through here that you can kind of get the basic here. Section 1 is verses 1 through 9. The blind man receives sight. So basically I'm asking you guys to read the chapter before coming on a Wednesday night just because it's easier. It's easier. It's in your head when you come. If it's kind of the first time that you're reading it, there's a lot of things to take in again. Okay, I have to read this chapter. I don't know how many times Scott reads it or Wes reads it before they teach, but I have to read this so many times to be able to get this info in my head. Verses 1 through 9. Section 1, the blind man receives sight, verses 1 through 9. So I'm going to read it here. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Verse 3, Jesus answered, Neither have this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. Verse 5, As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is in by interpretation, sent. He went this way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. The neighbors, therefore, and they which had before had seen that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Verse 9, Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him, but he said, I am he. Okay, so as Jesus passed by, right? And as Jesus passed by, so the previous chapter taught by Scott told us that Jesus passed by those who wanted to stone him, right at the end there, as he passed by. That was to get out of a bad situation. Okay, in this situation, Jesus is still just walking by. He's passing on through. People aren't stopping him. Because he's just able to pass by. Brother Scott touched on this really well. It's a spiritual thing that Jesus was able to do that. It wasn't just that he's able to cloak his face and walk on through a cloud like an assassin. He's actually able to just pass on through and not be noticed by people. That's a spiritual thing because he's God. He's able to do that. Okay? People threatening to kill someone is pretty hard to hide, especially if you're right in public. Jesus was able to pass on right through. So, and as Jesus passed by, so this is continuing from that situation, okay? Those who thought that Jesus was guilty of false teaching, guilty of blasphemy, those are the people that he's just passed by. Now, John continues this account saying that Jesus passed by a man who was blind from birth. I like reading this because it makes me think that Jesus wasn't shaken or disturbed by these people that want to kill him. He's just like, I'm just going to go through. See you guys. Like, make way, I'm out. And it was done. He just simply passed through. The disciples, as they're walking by, asked this question, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? The disciples looked at this man and did not have an answer for his situation, right? They didn't have an answer to what was going on in his life. He was an unsolved riddle to them. He was a puzzle that they couldn't put back together because it made no sense to them. So who did it? Who caused the problem here? Who made this puzzle unsolvable? Who messed up? Who did it? Was it him? Was it his parents? What happened here? And notice it wasn't a need to help the man. They weren't saying to Jesus, hey, we should help this guy. They're saying, let's look at the theological problem here of sin and who did the stuff that made this guy this way. And that's a really sad thing to think about. Because that tells you that there was a discussion about his condition rather than a care for his condition. Imagine that you went to a hospital because you've got a rare disease, and instead of any of the doctors actually testing you or trying to help you or trying to heal you, they just discussed you in front of you. And there's a board of them, and they're all just like, oh, this is horrible, and this is horrible. And they just kept talking about it. That wouldn't give you any confidence. That wouldn't help you. It wouldn't make you feel good. But there these disciples are who've been following around Jesus, who have seen these incredible miracles, and they're like, let's just talk about this guy right in front of him. Who sinned? Was it him or his parents? It's like, the guy's blind, he's not deaf. Don't be rude, guys, come on. But this discussion was a cultural question more than anything else. Okay, it wasn't really their fault they were asking this question. It was a cultural thing. Jews back in those times had certain beliefs that a baby may even sin in the womb, and this was punishment because of that. A baby in the womb could sin, and then being born blind would be the repercussions of the sin in the womb. Now, that's not something I believe. I don't think a baby can sin in the womb. A baby can be born into a sinful world, through sinful parents. Because of Adam and Eve, our sinful father and mother of the faith, really. But in the womb, I don't know if that's something I believe in. A good discussion to have for sure. Or maybe it was punishment for a sin that the man might later commit. So they're thinking, hey, before he was even out of the womb, he's done something wrong. Or later in his life, he's going to do this, and he should be punished for it before doing that thing. Well, then what if he didn't do it because he was blind? What if he couldn't sin then because of that? There's issues with these thoughts. There's issues with these problems, right? Or maybe this is the one that affects a lot of people. Maybe it was, in fact, the sins of the parents being passed on to the son. Something completely out of the son's control. Mum and dad messed up, and it's been passed on to you. Again, that's a hard thing to think about, a hard thing to kind of talk about. But Jesus turns around and says, neither this man nor his parents have sinned. That's verse 3. Nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. So Jesus said that the man's blindness was not caused by some specific sin on the part of him or his parents. The sin of Adam and Eve in the garden is why we have these sad situations. We have some people in our church with special needs, with health problems that stopped them from coming back to church or being involved in different situations. We know that the reason why there is death and pain and all the agony in the world because of sin. That's the way it is. The sin of Adam set the principle of death and its associated destruction in the world, and we've had to deal with it ever since. Basically, Adam and Eve's sin set that ball rolling, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger as more people have multiplied across the whole world, and they continue to sin, and it's just this big, big avalanche of sin that we just cannot control. I'm thankful that we have God who can do that, right? And Jesus says, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. The works of God should be revealed in him. Revealed, shown through him, right? Speaking of this man's situation, Jesus told the disciples that even the man's blindness could be used in the plan of God. You may be blind, but you can be used. You may be disabled, but you can be used. You may be this, you may be that, but you know what? You can all be used. And that's an amazing thing. That's why it's awesome to look at our congregation on a Sunday morning and you think everyone's coming from different backgrounds. Broken homes, single-parent families, abuse, perfect homes, great families, and you just stick them all in one room together and we are one big Christian family. And it's like, wow, how else would that happen? Because we're all being used in God's plan. We're all being used to bring people to Jesus, and that's an amazing thing to think about. So that the works of God should be revealed in him. So the question went from, why is this man blind? The disciples asking that question, to, what can God do in this situation? And that's the amazing thing. Think blindness, think you can't see anything. It is dark. That's the way it's been ever since birth. But we're no longer asking, why is this man this way? We're asking, what can God do instead, in this situation instead? So in this man's case, the specific work of God would be soon revealed to heal him of his blindness, right? We spoiler alert, a couple of verses down the line, Jesus heals him, okay? It's great. God may reveal his works in other lives, in other ways, even as joy, even as like stamina or endurance through a tough situation. It isn't just a healing thing. It's long-suffering, able to do that with a heart that's for God. And that's an amazing thing to think about. Because you think about the people who are hurting, the people who are hurting in this church, and what they go through every single day, yet they still follow Jesus. That's God being revealed through them to other people. It's pretty amazing. So, one thing I want to kind of say is this is a real hard thing to think about, because it does not mean that God deliberately caused the child to be born blind, right? The man to be born blind, just so that Jesus could heal him. We know that the bad stuff in the world is not from God, it is from sin. It's caused from sin. God is using this bad situation to be turned good. And that's something you guys need to think about. Because for me, that took a long time for me to think about and actually understand a little bit deeper of like, did God want this way to be this way? Or actually is it because of the sin in the world that is why the situation is played out that way? Bad way to say that, I know, jumbling my words. But just think about that. Is it human caused? Is it God caused? Because we know good things come from God. We know that God can do an amazing thing. Okay, we know God can heal people. He's just about to in this verse, in this chapter. We know it can happen. So that's the thing to think about. And on the other side of that, we can think it means that God, however, can overrule the disaster of the child's blindness. He can destroy the sin that has made that child blind and make them whole again. Defeating the result of sin in this world. The result being disease and pain and agony and death. That's what God does. Jesus then says, I must work the works of him who sent me whilst it is day. That's verse 4. Instead of focusing on the man as a theological problem, so instead of it being like a biblical thing, a scriptural thing, Jesus saw him as an opportunity to work the works of the Father. And that's an amazing thing to think about. Like, why do we do the things that we do? If we're doing it for Jamie, maybe I should just stop. Because that's not going to get very far, right? That's very selfish. That's very inward focused. If we're doing it for the Father, that's very outward focused. That's trying to push God out instead of keeping him in for me to be glorified. Instead, I want to glorify him. Okay? But Jesus sensed an urgency to do this whilst it was still day. He said, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. I must work. I love that. Jesus was a worker, okay? Jesus is a worker, and it's a well-earned title to the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the worker, right? The guy, the servant, coming to scrub your feet when they're horrible and disgusting, doing all this lowly tasks. And also, he's the chief worker. He's the guy in charge, right? He's not just the bottom here, he's the top. And it's amazing that the guy at the top lowers himself to scrub feet whilst also healing the guys and teaching them all these amazing things. Rabbis back in those days would not be scrubbing toes. There would be someone doing that for them. Jesus was doing the teaching, the healing, the kindness, the love, and the serving at the bottom as well. And that's an amazing thing to think about, because that's double tiered, right? He's coming up here, he's coming down here, he's coming up here, and you're like, wow, Jesus, you're just amazing. How do I do that? It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to do that, guys. And then also, he's the worker, the chief worker, and then he's the example of all workers. It's something that we should all be aiming to be. Spurgeon said that. He's one of my favorite theologians, and that's one of my favorite verses, quotes from him, because it tells you just the dynamics of Jesus. Low, high, servant, king, but doing both sides and being that example for all of us to try to be. Right? The night is coming when no one can work. Jesus understood that opportunities for service and doing good don't last forever. These things dry up. Jesus also knew that healing this man on the Sabbath would bring greater opposition from the religious leaders who already wanted to silence him and to kill him. But Jesus' compassion for the man drove him to do it anyway. People are closing in, trying to lock down days when you can and you can't do things. The law says this, we say that, don't do this, how about you do that? And Jesus is saying, you know what? This guy's blind every single day of the week. He needs to be healed. Doesn't matter what day it is right now, he needs to be healed. I'm going to do it. I love that attitude. I love that. Right now, it needs to happen. I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever come up to someone and you said, I really need help. And they're like, okay, yeah, how can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I just got this need, I've got this problem. And I've done it before. I went up to people that I've served with in different churches, and I've been like, will you just pray for me? Can you just pray for me for wisdom or something? I'm just about to go into a situation here, and I just need someone to pray. And they're like, sure, yeah, I'll add you to my prayer list. I'm like, yeah, but what about like right now? Can you pray for me right now? Because that needs to happen. Like Jesus is doing it right now. He's not waiting for the Monday, Sunday, the Tuesday, whatever day afterwards that he's waiting for. He's saying, okay, whatever day of the week it is, it just so happens to be the Sabbath, I don't care. I don't care. This guy needs to be healed. And that's a beautiful thing. To not heal a blind man is more devastating than healing on the Sabbath. For Jesus, that's a crazy, crazy thing. The bigger issue is that the religious leaders cared more about the law, or what they thought was the law, than the people around them. They all knew this guy. We read in a second when he turns around and says, isn't that guy that has begged it? They all know him. They've all seen him, yet they don't help him. So Jesus heals the man in verses 6 to 7. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. He spat on the ground and made clay with saliva. Sounds pretty nasty. But Jesus used what was really undoubtedly one of his more unusual methods to do a miracle. Why?
Where would the blind guy know where to wash his eyes?
To the pool.
No, but he's blind.
Yeah, well, this is the faith part. We're going to hammer that in a second. But this is the amazing part. Jesus is giving him commands, and he could have turned around at any point and been like, what pool are you talking about? I've never seen it before. Blind. But the pool is a pretty important thing. It's a pretty key part of this whole area. People are coming and going, trying to get the healing, trying to get in there as the angel stirred up the water, as we read in a couple of chapters before. People were around, hustle and bustle around that pool because it had healing tendencies. And this guy probably would have been right near that area. But it would have been well known. And he would have been able to ask for something like that, right? But it's faith. We're going to have this in a second, but that's a great question. Okay, good job. But think about this. Why did he use clay, the mud, the dust of the earth, and spit? Well, just as God used the dust of the ground to do a work of creation in Genesis, Jesus did a work of creation right there. He created sight for the man. He brought that back. He restored sight back to him. He's doing what the Father did. And I think that's incredible. Jesus found it important to change his methods of healing so no one could ever make a formula of how he's doing things. Like, this is how he does it. We've worked him out. And he's like, well, one day I'm just kind of touching the person. Next day I'm going to, and we're just changing it up. We're just going to keep doing it. And I think that's fantastic because what it does is it keeps people guessing, but two, how can you prove that he's a fraud if he keeps changing his methods? How can you prove that he's a trickster if he keeps changing the way that he's doing things? You can't. It's all miracles. It's amazing. The power was in God, not in the method. That's the big deal here, okay? The methods changed. The power source never did. In the Gospel of Mark, we can read about two other healings Jesus did with his saliva. Mark 7:33 and 8:23. Go check those out if you want, but basically same deal. Spits on the ground, or just spits on his hands, done, healed. Go and wash in the pool of Siloam. In this miracle, Jesus took all the initiative. He took all the action. He stepped up and did the things, okay? Jesus came to the blind man. The blind man did not come to him. Okay? Jesus was passing by, and what happened? The disciples said, hey, there's a blind man over there. So Jesus went to him. And that's really cool. Jesus notices. That's a really small detail, but that's a beautiful thing to think about. You may think that you're not worthy to be noticed, to be seen, or anything like that, but Jesus noticed the blind man begging on the side of the road. The disciples questioned about it, but he went into action. That's awesome. So the blind man did not come to him, but even so, he expected the blind man to respond with faith-filled action. This is coming to your question about the pool, about finding out where it was. The healing would not happen unless the man responded with faith, with that action to go and do. Jesus is saying, I'm going to do this. Now go and do that, and you'll get your eyesight back. And he's like, okay. But honestly, hands up here, who would really appreciate having mud rubbed in your eyes? A bit of spit, a bit of dust. Would you really enjoy that? No, no hands up. That's just a record for the video there. 0 hands up right now. Some would look at Jesus as he's doing this miracle and object, saying it's offensive, right? I know you get those mud masks. This isn't the same. This is someone's saliva, okay? Maybe they were saying it would be offensive or inadequate or disgusting or disrespectful even. People wouldn't like the way he did this. So the pool of Siloam came through Hezekiah's tunnel, which was a remarkable engineering feat built in the Old Testament times. You can read about that, okay? Turn to the Old Testament, check it out. It's an amazing account to look at. But the blind man went and he washed in that pool that's been there for so long, that has had these waters running through it. These waters that have been sent. That's the translation of Siloam. Go for it.
Isn't it like an angel touches the water and then if you jump in the pool,
You get the first one in there. That's what they would say. But Jesus isn't even saying, be the first one in. Jesus is saying, I've done the healing. Just go and wash. That's the awesome thing. Everyone else, a couple of chapters back, we touch on that. We touch on the stirring of the water that people would say was an angel doing that. So everyone would rush to be the first one in. There'd be this huge, run, get in there quick now. There's the stirring, let's go. And there'd be like this big race to get there.
Is that actually true or is that,
What do you think?
I don't know. Does it say it in the Bible that an angel touches it?
I don't know. What have you read?
I don't know.
So, read it, find out, okay? But just like all those guys rushing to the pool to get in there as the angel stirred the water, or whatever was going on, whatever you read, this took faith. When Jesus did not even promise the blind man sight in his action, it was simply implied. But the man acted on faith, and that's what happened here. It's amazing. Still, as a blind man, he had to find his way down to the pool, down its steps into the pool itself, and do the washing. And then he came back seeing. And this is the first time in biblical record a person has healed a man of their blindness. From Genesis all the way through to John. So check that out right there. Other healings happened. Other stuff's happened. But blindness, no. Blindness has not been restored. This is the first time. No prophet, no priest, no apostle, no judge, anyone like that ever gave sight to eyes that were born blind. And that's the incredible, born blind. Psalm 146:8 tells us this: the Lord opens the eyes of the blind. Isaiah 35:5 tells us of a prophecy of what Jesus would do. The eyes of the blind shall be opened. The Bible tells us it's going to happen. It's awesome. But the neighbors and those who had seen this man before questioned, wasn't this the guy who sat and begged? He is like him, but this surely isn't the guy. And we get to section 2 right here. I am he. Okay, section 2, verses 10 to 12. Just two verses here. I am he. Therefore said they unto him, how were thine eyes opened? And he answered and said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes, and said unto me, go to the pool and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. And then said they unto him, where is he? And he said, I know not. I am he. It seems amazing. If you guys heard about this, a blind person who got their sight back, it'd take a lot of convincing to be convinced, to be swayed to believe that this guy was ever blind. But the transformation in his life was so significant that many found it hard to believe that he was actually even the same man. But then they were like, isn't he the same guy? They're questioning it. Like, we've seen him. I threw a couple of coins to him the other day. You know, he's begged and he's begged and he's been on the same street corner every single day of his life. Isn't that the guy? He looks really familiar. No, he's like him. That's the guy. I am he. But we all go through these transformations in our lives when we experience Jesus. We get a glimpse of light in our dark lives, in our sinful lives. Before Jesus, when we are sinful and just sinful sinners rolling around in sin, we get a glimpse of light in our lives. But then we in faith have to make a decision to follow Jesus. We go through Romans Road a lot. I'm not going to quote Romans Road tonight, but I'm going to tell you this story has the gospel throughout. We were born blind in sin. Jesus gives us an opportunity out of this. He can heal us from blindness to sight, to see truth, light in darkness, okay? Jesus offers this gift to us without us doing anything to deserve it. It's there, just waiting to be taken. We are sinners. Jesus is offering us salvation through his blood on the cross. In faith, we must choose to follow Christ in faith. In faith, we must go to the pool and wipe away the worldly dirt from our eyes and see the truth. In faith, we call Jesus our Lord and Savior. Right? This man who knew very little about Jesus, and maybe had heard a few things about him, maybe had heard other people talking about him, he described Jesus as a man called Jesus. That's all he had. He just called him. He just called Jesus. That was his name. That's what people called him. Not Lord, not Messiah, not even the man from Nazareth. And then he didn't even know where Jesus was after that. He went to the pool, he washed his eyes, and he was like, who was that? Where's the guy gone? Where is he? Jesus, anyone? No? Okay. The man seemed to know nothing about Jesus except his name, and that he had healed him. Section 3, verses 13 to 17, the Pharisees challenged the healing. So we have, they brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay unto mine eyes, and I washed, I do see. Therefore some said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Jesus took the initiative, as I said before, in this miracle. Could have done it on any other day he chose, but he chose that day. Had to happen then. Jesus, I think, chose to do this miracle on the Sabbath to challenge the petty traditions, the small traditions that had been put in place by the religious leaders. Traditions that they had lifted to the place of binding laws. Right? These are just your words. These aren't incredibly sacred things, but you're holding it in such high esteem. You're not gods. You're religious leaders. Jesus was God in the flesh. He knew what he was doing. Therefore, some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. We can read in different Gospels, and he's the Lord of the Sabbath. Right? You guys?
Is it one of the commandments to keep the Sabbath?
Is it? You got a Bible? Check it out. Tell me. Open your Bible, bro. No, don't ask Wes. You look it up. Your question. Get back to me. So I'm going to keep going, but check it. To the Pharisees, Jesus could not be from God because he did not line up with their traditions or their practices. He went against that. But there was a division. This is the best part. I love it. Straight there, instead of interaction with Jesus, and it caused a division. Some believed, some didn't. Some questioned, well, can a sinner really do these miracles? Because there must be something good here then, right? Go.
It says in Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, keep the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay. And what is Jesus? Holy.
Holy. Okay. He is holy. He is over the top holy, right? He's the reason why we keep the Sabbath day, because we are not holy. Does Jesus have to do that? And this is the issue. They're looking at Jesus as a man, not as God. We look at Jesus as God and say, you can do whatever you want because you're in charge. They're saying, keep my laws, keep what's written down, hold to it because nothing has changed and nothing will ever change. This is the way it is. Whereas Jesus is saying, I'm God. I'm going to do this healing whenever it needs to happen because it needs to happen. So I'm saying, good job for finding it. If you get the answer in the Bible, man, it's the truth. You know what it is. So for humans, we need to keep the Sabbath holy. But for Jesus, who's been doing so many other miracles and proved himself, who are the religious leaders saying that he is? They're calling him a sinner, so of course they're going to challenge that. They're not calling him God. Good question. So there was division among them. Instead of uniting everyone, we know that the gospel causes you to pick a side. You either believe it or you don't. You accept it or you reject it. You either love Jesus or you hate Jesus. So they were divided between those who accepted him and trusted him and those who did not. Quite simply, here's your fence, pick a side. Where are you? In choosing, they took one of the sides regarding Jesus, that Jesus is a sinner and should be rejected, or our understanding and application of the Sabbath law is wrong. And if it was the second one, that would be then challenging a lot of Jewish law, a lot of stuff that had been written before that they had held really tightly to. But then the first one is saying that Jesus isn't God and he's a sinner. So which side of the fence are they going to fall on? That's a pretty tough side for Jewish leaders to fall. Right? One is rejecting scripture that they've held to for so long. The other is to call God a sinner. Pick a side, guys. That's pretty tough. And they asked the guy, what did you say to him because he opened your eyes? What did he say to you? And I think that's an amazing thing to think about. They're not saying, they're not challenging him basically about what happened beforehand, anything like that. They're saying, what did you say? Because most of the religious leaders had made up their minds about Jesus, saying that he was not of God. But there was division. What did he say? What did he say? What did he say? Let's find out where he lies. They thought that they would get the opinion of the man born blind regarding Jesus. What do you say of him? What side of the fence do you pick? He is a prophet. Jesus did not specifically say that if the man was washed the mud away from in the pool of Siloam that he would get his sight back, but he did imply that through the faithful action. The blind man's basically saying this guy came and he predicted this would happen through his words, and it happened. He's a prophet. I think that's incredible to think this guy beforehand was just like, this is Jesus, this guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he went. But his name's Jesus. Now he's saying he's a prophet. And even though Jesus was not present when the man regained his sight, you could say that Jesus prophesied that the guy would regain his sight. He promised, or he said that if you do it this way, if I command you to do this and you go and do this, something's going to happen here. He asked what he did. He asked what the blind man to do in faith. The blind man did it, and he was healed. Prophecy? What do you think? Section 4, verses 18 to 34. This is the biggest chunk here. The healed man vanished. Okay, 18. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then doth he not now see? And his parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but by what means he seeth, we know not, or who have opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him, he shall speak for himself. These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue, excommunicated, kicked out, gone. Therefore, said his parents, he is of age, ask him. It's his deal, not ours. Don't talk to us about it. Talk to him. He's old enough. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. And he answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that, whereas I was blind, now I see. Then said they to him again, what did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? How did he do it? What did you say to him? What did he say to you? He answered them, I have told you already, and you did not hear. Wherefore would you hear it again? If I've told you once, I've told you twice, you're never going to hear the message, right? Will you also be his disciples? You want to follow him? I love that. I love that little bit. Then they reviled him and said, thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciple. We're better than you, right? We know that God spoke unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, why, the herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he have opened mine eyes. Now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of God, and do of his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. That's an amazing thing to say right there. If you're not of God, this ain't happening. Verse 34, they answered and said unto him, thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost teach. Thou teach us? How dare you teach us, you sinner? And they cast him out. The Jews didn't think that he was blind. It was easier for the religious leaders to believe that the guy was lying, that he was a fraud, that he had been sat on that corner begging day in, day out for the whole of his life, putting on a fraudulent lifestyle, just so one day this guy could come through and he could then say, I've been healed. That was more believable to them, for them, instead of them saying that Jesus actually healed the guy. That's how far they were going to go. Because they could not explain it, they could not believe it. They didn't have a reason to how it happened, so they could not believe it. So the Pharisees questioned the parents of the blind man. And I hated this when this happened to me. When I was in school and I'd do something wrong, they were like, right, that's it. We're bringing in your parents. And you're like, oh no, stuff's going to go down now. It's going to get a lot worse. Did you know Jamie's been doing this at school? No. And then it'd be like, great, grounded for 1 week. And did you know that he's been doing this at school? How dare you? Oh, grounded for 2 weeks. And it would just rack up and make it so much worse. But in this situation, the parents aren't even standing up or even involving themselves. They're just saying, here's the buck. Here he is. He's of age. Talk to him about it. Not our issue. That's really sad. Is this your son who you say was born blind? The religious leaders turned into detectives to start to see if they can unfold this huge conspiracy theory about a blind man healed. They questioned the parents and asked them to verify that the man was truly born blind. Are you sure your son couldn't see? How sure? Give me a percentage. The parents obviously verified, yes, this is our son, and yes, he was born blind. The parents honestly should have been able to, that answer from the parents should have been enough to persuade them. But they weren't happy with the answer. Because the answer would then point to Jesus being God, Messiah. By what means he now sees we do not know, or who opened his eyes we do not know. We don't know what happened. And that's an honest answer again. That's not the bad part. The parents could identify their son and that he was born blind. They would not speak to the question of how he was healed because they probably didn't know. Or maybe, we've already read this, but there was already a threat going about that anyone that confirmed any of these miracles were going to be kicked out. So maybe they didn't know. Or maybe they were threatened and scared to be kicked out of their community. Kicked out of their synagogue, to be kicked out of their area that they lived. Because it said the Jews had already agreed with that whoever confessed that Jesus was in fact Christ, they would be kicked out of the synagogue. Excommunication back in those days happened like this. The first time you get kicked out, happened for 30 days. 30 days on your own and you're going to learn your lesson. Nope, you're not sticking to the law again anymore? Okay, fine. Second time, 30 more days. How dare you? Third time, you were treated as a leper. You were kicked out. You were moved out. No touch, no community, living on your own. Had to announce yourself as a person dying or as an excommunicated person so that people would walk across the street instead of walking by you. You had to live as if someone who had a horrible disease lived. That's not a life. And obviously the parents feared that response. He is of age, ask him. Typically it's instinctive and normal for parents to protect their children. Anyone that kind of gives my kids hassle, I'm ready to go. That's just the truth. We do jiu-jitsu. It happens every week. My kid gets hurt or he gets choked out by someone and there's a proud dad and I'm just like, ooh, let's go. I'm ready to pound some feast right now. And Rach has to talk me off and be like, no, it's a sport. Relax, calm down. And I'm like, they hurt my son. I want to hurt them. Not even them. I'm going to hurt their dad. It's just, that's the protective side that comes out. Right? And that's just something that happens. But these parents are so frightened in this situation that all they could do was to put it on their son instead. And that's a heartbreaking thing to even think about. I can't step in to protect my kid anymore because you're going to hurt me and my wife so much. Here he is. He's old enough to handle this situation on his own. Ask him about it, not us. Then the religious leaders turned their interrogation towards the man who was blind. They say this phrase, give God the glory. And this is kind of a command, right? Basically saying, tell the truth. like swearing an oath on the Bible when you're in court. That's the kind of thing here, saying, give God the glory, because that man isn't God. We're telling the truth here. What we need is the truth. Detectives seeking the truth. They're kind of denying Jesus of doing any of the healing. We know this man is a sinner. The religious leaders obviously knew exactly what they wanted to label Jesus as, and they continued that. But for what? For not holding to their man-made traditions. Jesus did not sin. He was perfect. We humans have to keep the Sabbath holy. Jesus is perfectly holy. We had this discussion. You've had to make me jump ahead of myself, but it's great. There are no blemishes on Jesus that are his. He did not blemish himself, right? For his own sin. That's our sin on him. He lived a perfect life. The healed man responds, one thing I know, that I was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see. The man born blind didn't know anything about Jesus, but he did know how Jesus touched his life, how he changed his life, how he went from blindness, darkness, nothingness, to being able to see now everything. At that moment, it wasn't even an argument. They could not argue against what Jesus did in this man's life, because he's saying, I didn't see anything before, now I see everything. You can't argue against that. But they weren't willing to accept it. Whether they were willing to argue against it or to see that this argument was done, they weren't willing to accept what he was saying. But what a great answer to a question. I don't know about the details, about all the science in the world. I'm not a great scientist, but you know what? I was blind, but now I see. That's why I believe in Jesus. I don't know about all the things about dinosaurs and the Bible and the meteorite and the Big Bang and everything else, but you know what I do know? I was blind, and now I see. I struggle to contemplate the will of God and how big he is and how mighty he is, but you know what I do know? This simple truth. I was blind, but now I see. Because of the grace of God. What an answer to a question. They said to him again, I love that. They say to him again, questioning after questioning, an intense, harsh interrogation. They're demanding answers from this man who could now see. The answer from the healed man is one of wisdom. I've already told you, and you didn't listen. So why would I tell you again? I've given you the answer. You didn't accept it. My answer is the same. Why am I wasting my breath? Simple, profound wisdom in his back and forth with the religious leaders. If you keep asking the same question, don't expect a different answer. The truth is the truth, even if it hurts, right? The healed man then mocked the religious leaders by saying, is this because you want to become one of their followers too? You want to become a disciple of this guy as well? That's great. You're aggressively attacking him, yet you seem to want to be a follower of him? Oh, wow, okay, let's do that. The response of the religious leaders was to show that they followed Moses. And this healed man was clearly wrong to follow this sinner. But Jesus isn't Moses. Jesus is new Moses, right? Jesus is better. Moses 2.0, right? More than 2.0. Like Jesus is, you guys. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we don't know where he is from. You know where he's from? He's from heaven. You're getting this way wrong, religious leaders. Moses went up on top of a mountain and spoke to God, yes. But you know who was with? Who was doing the vocal points right there? God, this is the Son of God. They were all up in there. God, Son, Holy Spirit. That's what's happening up on top of that mountain. The religious leaders could not keep from displaying their own proud arrogance of who they followed. Following Moses. That's the way it is. And their prejudice, contempt of Jesus. They hated Jesus for what he was bringing up. We don't even know where he's from. Well, prophecy tells us where he's from. The Bible tells us where Jesus will come from. But they were too proud to think of that this man who healed on the Sabbath could possibly be anything special. But why this is a marvelous thing, the healed man said this about their unbelief, not about the miracle of Jesus. This is a marvelous thing that you can't accept this, that you can't see what's happening and accept it. It was as if he told the religious leaders, your unbelief and ignorance in the face of the evidence of me, of physical me being able to see right now, is more of a miracle than my cure. The fact you can't accept this is more of a miracle because it's so clear. We know that God does not hear sinners. This is a sad thing to think about. Isaiah 1:15 and Psalm 66:18 tells us that God is not obligated to hear the prayer of the sinner. He doesn't have to hear, but by his grace, he does. Okay? The healed man taught this with valid application. The simple man who was born blind then proved that the claim that Jesus was a sinner was false. Right? He wouldn't have been able to do anything if he wasn't from God. The leaders are furious with this man trying to teach them. Like, who are you, you sinner, trying to teach us? Did I not just tell you who we follow? We follow Moses. I don't need to be taught by a sinner like you. I'm a leader in this place. Being taught by scum like you, get out of here. You are completely born in sin, and you are teaching us. That's horrible. You are completely born in sin. It's the truth, though. We all are, right? We're all born in sin. Completely born in sin, head to toe, born in sin, covered in sin. The religious leaders despised the common person, and now this man in particular. And they were especially angry because he was right and they were wrong. They were firing off. And with that, the religious leaders threw him out, and they cast him out. The excommunication of the man who was born blind, as difficult as it is, would be a great thing. Again, God's hand, God's work being worked through this, okay? Really sad situation, being separated from his family, being kicked out of the synagogue, being kicked out of his life, having to change a lot of things. But actually, God would come through again, because that's what God does. The man would be more connected to Jesus through this. The religious leaders treated this man so poorly. They abused him, they insulted him, they rejected him. Guys, there's a moment in my life when I went to a church in England, in Andover. It's St. Mary's Church. It's the biggest church in Andover. Huge spire, stained glass windows. And I walked in. I had been in a fight that night. I had a bloodied nose. I had a ripped shirt. I had covered in mud. My knuckles were broken and bruised. I had blood all over myself. It's nasty. And I walked into that church, and I asked the pastor to pray for me. And he turned around and said, "We don't pray with people like you." What that did was cause me to look for Jesus somewhere else. That's what's happening here. The religious leaders of that time are saying, "We don't have time for you, blind man. Get out." And what that's doing is pushing him further and further, closer to Jesus, further away from them, closer to Jesus. Section 5. True vision and true blindness, verses 35 to 41. Final one here. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when they had found him, he said unto him, "Dost thou believe on the Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him?" And Jesus said unto him, "Thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee." That's incredible. Verse 38, and he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. 39, and Jesus said, "For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and that they which might see might be made blind." And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words and said unto him, "Are we blind also?" There's that division again. There's that dispute. Jesus said unto them, "If you were blind, you should have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remaineth." Jesus heard that they cast him out. Then he went and found him. The religious leaders rejected the man whom Jesus healed. Jesus then made it a point to meet him and receive him, to bring him in. And that's amazing. It hurts to be rejected by others. It does. Whether you show it or not, it hurts, even on the inside. But how incredible that Jesus comes and finds us when we are cast out. When the one leaves the flock, the Bible tells us this. The shepherd leaves the 99 to go and find the one, to seek out the one. Do you believe in the Son of God? Do you believe? And Jesus called on the healed man to fully believe, and he did. So Jesus dealt with the physical needs of the man first, healing what needed to be healed. Then his persecution came along, the interrogation, the judgment, the religious leaders coming down hard on him. And then Jesus came to speak the truth and ask the man about his heart and what he truly believed. The physical first, then the spiritual. And then the man worshipped him. The religious leaders kicked him out and told him he no longer can worship at the temple with them. But Jesus basically said, I receive your worship. I receive your worship. Verse 38, and he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. Notice it doesn't say and then Jesus rejected that worship and said, get out my temple. No, Jesus is there right in front of him as the man's worshipping him. The fact that Jesus accepted the worship is another proof that Jesus was and is God. And that he knew himself to be God. He accepted that worship. He accepted what that was. He was saying, I am the Son of God. And he was worshipped. The man who was healed shows an incredible awareness of Jesus. Something to think about here. Progression again. We've already talked about the woman at the well and different situations throughout John here as well. But verse 11, Jesus is a man to him. It's just a guy who healed me. Verse 17, Jesus is a prophet. Verse 27, Jesus is my master. I am his disciple. Verse 33, Jesus is from God. Verses 35 to 38, Jesus is the Son of God. Verse 38, Jesus is who I trust. Again in verse 38, Jesus is who I worship. What a progression. From just a man to who I trust and worship now, the Son of God. For judgment I have come into this world. John recorded these words of Jesus as part of a larger theme in his gospel, that men were divided over Jesus, they accepted and they rejected. Okay, that's what happens here. Jesus brought judgment by being a dividing line. Pick a side. Pick a side. That's an active form of judgment. That's an active form of get off the fence, right and wrong, black and white, pick it. Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be? That those who do not see may see. Those who admit their spiritual blindness can find sight in Jesus. When we turn around and say, I'm a sinner and I need to be set free, that's what Jesus does. But when we're too prideful to talk to Jesus about our sins, when we've got too much arrogance, or whatever it is that's stopping us from truly admitting, that's what actually shuts us off from being able to get close to Jesus. Put these walls up and barriers up and all these things up that stops us being able to be there. Whereas Jesus is just saying, just admit it. You'll be set free. We can see in this chapter how Jesus heals blind people, spiritually blind and physically blind people. Jesus takes the initiative to heal us from blindness. Jesus does a work of creation in us through these actions. We must be obedient to Jesus' commands, like the man going down to the pool. Jesus commands us to be washed in the water of baptism, just like he was, to be baptized. And once all that happens, we are a changed person. We are changed by all these actions, all these things. We are loyal to Jesus and stand firm in the persecution, just like that healed man, who only knew that his name was Jesus, who only knew that he healed him. We grow from little knowledge to greater knowledge, and we never get to know the name of the healed man, but we know how Jesus treats him, right? And shows him love. A true disciple is one who is content to remain anonymous as long as God gets the glory. And that's a great thing to think about, because this man is not named, but God is revealed through the works of him right there. Are we blind also? The Pharisees sneered at Jesus, confident in their own spiritual understanding. We don't need you. We're not blind. Are we really blind too? Come on. But they are blind, because they cannot see the Son of God right in front of them. They are rejecting the Lamb of God. If you were blind, you would have no sin. If only the Pharisees would actually admit their spiritual blindness, they could be forgiven and set free. But because they say, we see, their sin remains. There's a great difference between the one who is blind and knows it and the one who simply shuts their eyes and keeps them shut. Right? If you know that you're blind and you are actually physically blind, you know that. That's a life lived. Whereas if you just walked around with your eyes shut all the time and pretended to be blind, that's a pretty tricky thing. That's a false life. That's a lie. That's fraud, right? That's what they accuse this healed man of. Which one are you? Are you blind that needs to be added their sight back to them through Jesus Christ? Or are you just pretending? Who do you say Jesus is? The Son of Man or a sinner? These are questions that have popped up throughout this whole chapter. And I've got 3 final questions for you here, but something to think about. Again, we've said this question a few times, but who do you say Jesus is? Who is he to you? 3 final points for you here. How's your faith? Because the blind man showed a pretty incredible amount of faith here. To walk to the pool, to get himself into the water, to wash his eyes, to stand firm in front of those Pharisees as they interrogated him, to not back down, to not accept what they were throwing at him, but to fully stand by Jesus. How's your faith? Because that's an incredible example of faith right there. Do you believe in the Son of God? Do you believe in Jesus? Again, another way to say that is, who do you say he is? Because if he's not Jesus, Son of God, Lord of Lords, King of Kings, who is he? Because that's going to change how you view him. That's going to change how you receive him. That's going to change how you accept him. That's going to change how you read the Bible. That's going to change everything. Okay? 3rd question for you here. Are you blind, or are you just shutting your eyes to Jesus? Are you actually blind and you've never been offered the chance to have your sight brought back to you by Jesus Christ, or are you just shutting your eyes to him? Being physically blind, not many of us have to go through that. No one in this room is physically blind, right? But when we shut our eyes and try and walk through a room, it gets pretty tricky. Are you literally just shutting your eyes to Jesus so that you don't have to see him, so that you don't have to make a decision, so that you don't have to pick a side on opposite sides of the fence here? Because that can only last for so long. And that's a question you should ask yourself every day. Am I opening my eyes to Jesus today, or am I shutting them? Am I accepting Jesus Christ into my life today, or am I not? That's basically what you're asking. Guys, I pray that you accept Jesus into your life every single day, that you pick up your cross and follow him every single day. But you know what? It's a really, really big thing to do. That's a tough thing to do. The Bible asks us to do that, so we should do our best, right? Guys, that's John chapter 9.